I brought this a couple weeks ago, or a couple months ago, and somebody said, "Oh, demonstrate how you make it." Well, this is spindle turning an extremist. Yeah. I learned how to make it from, I saw somebody make it from one of our church members had a grandfather who made these things, they're little weed pots. Ron Sheehan and I got into an argument about who made the longest one. So I finally ended up doing this and saying, "Okay, Ron, make it longer." But this is actually all just turned without any support or anything like that. So it was, again, just a spindle turning between centers. And so and the second part is people are really scared of the skew. And my comment is that the skew doesn't have to be a scary tool. Okay, it's different than a bowl gouge. But once you learn how to sort of do it, it goes, to me, fairly well. So what I'm hoping to do tonight is to show you a little bit more about just getting comfortable with the skew. That's what the job is. Once I've done that, I've done everything. I have never heard about what Thomas said about what the equipment you said about putting tension on the end of the tool.
Yeah, it's a drawbar. You put it in on the end of your tailstock, if you have a through tailstock.
Okay.
And then you tighten the nut, and it draws the piece back towards the tailstock. So if your tailstock is locked down, you can put tension on the piece instead of pressure.
So do you have one of those at home or something you could bring in to show us?
Sure.
Because I would really like to hear about that, to be honest. Because to me, one of the things I started out as skews, I always started out between centers. It's a spindle or whatever. So you're doing it between centers. The problem is when you're going extremely thin, as John referred to, is as soon as you put the pressure on that, this starts to bow out this way. So you have to worry about that sort of thing. So the first thing I'm going to make off. First thing you do is drill a hole in the end. What's that? However deep you want it for your butt claws. I'm only holding this just to see how much pressure I've got on it. I've got this at 850 RPM. One of the things I saw a thing by Jimmy Clues, he's a turner that goes at 3,000 RPM on everything, turns up to maximum. And I decided, well, that's what I need to do is turn everything at full speed. And so I did that. I very carefully did that, and then this was at the Ernie Conover demonstration. I had the machine turned up like this, and I was going speed. And one of these is home. So I got like that, and Ernie came over and went like this to my lathe, and he said, "Turn it down." Spindle turning. If you're turning too fast, his comment wasn't that you can't do better. His comment was that it's a sharpness of the tool. And one of the things that John referred to earlier today is that really using a skew is about how razor sharp that is. If this is sharp, you don't have to worry about anything else. Now I have, for me, I know you can use a roughing gouge, but I also have a big doing that not to demonstrate that you can do that. I'm telling that when these are first being made and somebody was making chair legs out in the middle of the woods, the farmer in the middle of the winter, I doubt he had 2 or 3 tools sitting around just for his convenience. Use whatever he had. It's not the tool that you're using, it's the way you use it that makes a difference. So, having said that, it's obviously faster and easier to do this, but this is only, I use my roughing gouge just for precisely that, roughing it down. Can you see from the top view from that? I haven't paid very much attention at all to how smooth that is or cut is because it's still quite a ways from finish. When I run my chisel, and again, sharpening my skew, John referred to this as another thing. You've seen people with a curved swept back skew versus a straight skew. I had a swept back skew for quite a while.
So the folks on the line can see this.
Zoom in.
Sorry, is it on the? Where's the one on the? Can you put it on this? On the
overhead.
Overhead? What's the overhead one? That one. My skew for a long while was curved back here, and if you take a look at that, I don't know if you can see it or not. If you hold your skew, if you sharpen your tool using this, can you zoom in on this? Can you see this? Just out of curiosity.
No, it's blocked by the
How about this one here?
camera one.
Can you go on that one? Anyway, let me try it this way.
There you go.
If you take an extreme case of sharpening your tool on a skew, when you put it against a round wheel,
Don't zoom out.
that is the shape you get, okay? Now, if I put that against a piece of wood, no matter what angle I get on that piece of wood, I'm going to get a dig in that part. So it's going to give you a catch if you're not careful.
Just leave it there. That's good.
Okay? So when I got one of those CBN wheels with a land on the side of it to do the sharpening of the skew, and you can do this on a belt grinder as well. You see people do it. But the purpose of that is that when you have the V shape on your skew, and then you have your wood coming in here, you can always ride that bevel and get in really tight with the bevel, and there's no question about where it is. So that's why I do that sharpness. And then when I'm actually using my skew on my lathe, I go back to the top one here. I don't know if it will show that much, but what I'm trying to do is I'm actually trying to lay this flat section on this flat section I'm actually turning here. I'm always working on these things from this end to that end because after there, there's no support, okay? I know people said about moving it in the middle here, but to be truthful, once I'm done at this end, I have sufficient support for going through the whole length of the piece as long as I've got it on there. So I'm not trying to go all the way, I'm not trying to do it to one end for that reason. That's just my preference. I don't, whatever you do. And again, what Thomas referred to as putting that under tension, we've completely changed the dynamics again, because now you don't have to worry about vibration and a bunch of other things, and even the support will be changing, I think. People sometimes talk about turning uphill versus downhill. And so I've been doing the wrong thing, right? I'm turning up, I'm running uphill. Well, I'm fortunate that I have able to just change hands and go downhill if necessary, but that's not always the option for everybody.
Doug, there's one advantage to being bald-headed. You don't get your hair in the camera.
Jim?
Yeah.
I think I'll postpone that particular style for as long as I can, if you don't mind.
Now he's just bragging about having hair.
Sorry, I'll try and move my head back. Because, thank you. You'll notice I still haven't done anything about gripping this so far, even though it's getting quite thin, but it's not actually vibrating. The other part is that I'm also using my tool stock here, or my tool rest here to rest on as opposed to the piece, so I'm not actually doing it. Now, when it comes to actually holding it, if you want to, you can hold it two ways. One is people worry about a catch and say, well, you're going to cut yourself when you do this, okay? Well, if you put your finger over here, you're going to definitely have a bloody knuckles playing whatever in a square piece. But be truthful, on this section here, the piece breaks way before it's going to damage you. And, you know, the guys at the back say, well, why don't you throw it back there? Well, if I have a catch, it'll do a tiny little break right there and it's gone completely. You can also the waist hook, can you see that okay? That's finished now. That's down to the finished gauge. Again, you can see it, it looks like it, but what I want to really stress, guys, when you're doing this, is if you're doing it, your hand is on the rest, not on the piece. Any amount of pressure on that's going to break that now. So you've got to be really gentling it in. And the other part is the razor. think it's Ron Sheehan's favorite saying was that, want to get sharpen a tool? Because it could be sharper? Not because it's dull? I can still do a pretty serious amount of damage on it, but I can also find that if I have it sharpened up enough, so in gliding along, what I'm doing there is I'm not actually but again, the tool is cutting, there's no other pressure on the wood when you're doing that as you move along. This is the point where I start going uphill. Because
So, Doug, you're not rubbing the bevel?
yeah, I am actually. I'm riding the bevel. If I take a look at the tool, I don't know if you can see it or not, but what I'm doing as you go along there, the tool's there that I'm lifting up into the wall. I'm actually riding the bevel, but the bevel is actually going across that entire piece. So the bevel isn't sideways, it's actually, I'm literally following the, let's see if I can do a better picture.
I think he asked, are you rubbing the bevel? I'm not sure what the difference is.
Okay.
You're not floating it. Stuart Batty calls about floating it, but
Floating the boat.
Same about how much pressure.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, in that case, yeah,
Exact same attack of angle of attack, the whole thing.
it's about
Just
pressure.
whether or not you're letting it literally rub or whether you are floating across.
Well, I would call it floating across the surface much more than, any pressure at all or any rubbing of the bevel at all, you're just going to break that piece. Yeah.
So I notice you have a straight across skew.
Yes.
Is there a reason for that? Is there a preference or?
I prefer it. Just be, you mean the straight as opposed to cut back?
Yeah.
It's easier to sharpen. And to be honest, I never, once I figured out about this business, about the bevel on the skew being straight, suddenly that whole curvature was like, what do I need it for?
Okay.
So it was just like,
It's a preference.
it's a preference, yeah.
Okay.
And I haven't gone back to the other one. I'm not sure. And so to be honest, the side using a belt. Well, maybe you can do it on a Sorby belt wheel or something like that, as opposed to the side grinder. But this side grinder doesn't really lend itself to the.
So your bevel is concave or it's flat?
It's flat.
So you're doing it on a sander of some sort?
No, I'm doing it on the edge of the wheel. I
On the side of the wheel?
I have a CBN wheel with a 1-inch land on the side of it, so I'm not touching the side of the wheel. Definitely don't do it on the side of a vitreous wheel.
No.
That's
bad news.
yeah. You only need to see one guy who's gone blind doing that, but they do know not to do that. But yeah, I don't know if you can see that. If I show that from the bevel, but really, I'm riding it sort of like that as it goes along. So you're just, as you said, floating is a better term.
Yeah, that's a term.
Yeah.
Oops.
Nah, it's just a little bit of wood in the way.
It's sharpen your tool rest.
There you go.
Jim's question about floating, that's one of the reasons I was commenting about using this as your pressure point. And so literally, if you're bringing this tool and using your tool rest as a pressure point and bringing that in to touch, and once you've made the contact line, again, the old Woodturner dance, I guess is what they call it. You need to move your body instead of whatever. Once you make that contact, yeah, I can't see your tool. The tool is not flat on the tool. You're bringing up your top.
We just can't see it because your hand is now over the tool.
What's that, an angle?
So it's up, just the corner of the end is,
Is that better?
I just wanted
Yeah,
that to
usually
be
it's
clear
fine.
that you're not
Yeah, I see
flat
it,
on the
yeah.
tool.
But that's, you're right, it's ever so slightly up at an angle, so you're right in the corner here.
Is your bottom edge rounded
No,
on that?
No.
You're filling with your corner.
The corner of the,
No, I'm talking about the corner of, not the
no, this
side
is
of
not,
the-
this is not rounded either.
Yeah.
I've actually thought, I don't have a bottom edge rounded. I've thought about buying them because I've heard people that say that they're a lot easier to use as a skew just because of that whole angle business. I guess once you get on that corner, I don't know how much more it is. It might be better for big ones, but for little ones like this, it doesn't really matter to me that much. So, now, go ahead.
Well, just one other thing. I sort of feel strongly about when you're using the skew is to make sure that your tool rest has no nicks, right? Like it's got to be dead flat across, because if you have nicks in it, that's when you're going to get the catch when you go over that nick.
True. Especially with the square corner on the bottom.
Yeah.
That's a fair statement. I've never paid that close attention.
You turn 64-inch platters too, so offset.
Yeah, that's
You
true.
do that with a
You
skew.
don't mind stuff whipping by your face all the time.
Nothing. I'm sorry, I brought my mask and I didn't even think about putting it on. I should, let me do this. I gotta do this properly for safety purposes.
Yeah, the AAW might see this recording.
yeah, you're fine.
My biggest problem with this mask and my other mask, I've got one at the home now that's got a filter on the back with the air filter, that stays clear. But my biggest problem with these things is when you're doing flying stuff like this and it fogs up on you, you're much more likely to have an accident than if you don't.
Gotta pull me up for the fog-free shield, buddy.
Well, I understand. But anyway, but that's why I do actually have safety glasses on. So these are officially safety glasses. I always wear them in the shop no matter where I go. They're into the lesson. What you call a catch. You notice I had to catch at the end I was paying least attention to. I was in too much of a hurry.
It was the face shields. That's what I was thinking.
Face shield.
Make it super cool. Oh man, it smells like wobbling. Some should be like a powder notice. Why do you think I use it?
Doug, do you have a a homemade bed extension that will handle something as long as this demo piece you have out here?
I have a piece that the bed extension that goes out this long on the
The straight paramedic one.
yeah, straight paramedic one.
It looks like a,
Worked out just about right to the straight paramedic one.
Is that all one piece?
Yeah.
Two pieces.
Well, no, this is just one piece of walnut.
In the lower one?
Well, the lower one is salted maple. Yeah. The piece goes in about this far. It's glued in.
There's no used to go into the
And that's how far it flies when you have something go wrong.
Right. Now you have a garden double. Or a dagger. Ship.
Yeah, ship.
Well, the one thing I can say about that is that I said about not using straight grain, and that's a piece of curly maple. And so, thank you. I hope that was informative.
I have a question.
Yeah.
This is John. Sometimes I can, using the skew and everything is going very well and it's nice and smooth, and then all of a sudden I start getting ripples, and I don't know why that is. I think that I have the skew anchored on the tool rest and I'm riding the bevel, but I get ripples.
Oh, yeah, I got it. So that's one.
Any idea what I'm doing wrong or why you get them?
You're lifting the bevel off the wood. You're riding the bevel too hard.
Yeah, I would say you're pushing too hard, riding the bevel too hard as opposed to the other way on. I understand exactly what you're saying. You suddenly hear this sound and there's a vibration. It's like I didn't want the Haydn symphony here. I just wanted a nice, quiet work, and it does that. So I think it's the consensus here is you're probably just pushing a little bit too hard. You need to back off in your hand pressure. Move.
It's a nice way to get a nice spiral.
Yeah, or
Control it.
Drag it back.
Yeah, but that's where you're, if you're pushing too hard this way, or pushing too hard on your piece, then you need to bring your pressure back onto your tool rest as opposed to on your piece. Be very
sharpen your tool.
Yeah, and the other part is sharpening your tool. Be very, very conscious. That to me is one of the things is just be very conscious, because this tool, if it's sharp, really works well, and as you saw from my demonstration, that it also catches very easily and can throw a piece halfway across the room.
That's your skew, right? Please.
Okay, thank you.
So, Doug, your downward pressure is on the body side of the tool rest?
Yes. Yes.
Primarily?
Yeah, it's always, that's what I've always done, is it's like my pressure's here so that you really, and you're trying to get the leverage in there so that you have the most amount of, a lot of body motion is a very small motion on your tool itself. So that's, again, another thing that Ernie Conover taught us, and I'll use this piece as an example.
Is this carbon steel? Carbon steel?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure. It was one of my dad's tools.
Nice. Can I have it?
Can you? No, not this time.
He'll give you a piece of mulberry.
A mulberry?
Doug, do you ever turn toe down on the?
Toe down? You mean?
Yes, instead of, right.
Point.
I mean, the point is below the contact.
I have done it going into the, I have tried it going into, but I haven't practiced that much, Barry, to be honest, so I'm not very good at that sort of thing. As you guys saw, my coves are terrible. Our beads are terrible. It's like getting them without a catch.
What's your live center?
What is my live center?
Who makes that live center? That's very interesting. Wow, that doesn't fit.
It's a Sorby. I got a Sorby Sheffield Deluxe centering system. So it's a. They have.
Why don't you take a down shot?
Take a down shot on that. There you go.
Yeah. There you go.
So it's got all sorts of different little center things on it. I don't know where I got it. I just I think I bought it. Either I got it for Christmas or something like that. But it says, and the one I use is this one here with the point, and there's another couple with a side on it. One with a cone that's got nothing in it. But I mostly use that one and this one here. One of the things that Ernie Conover mentioned was that when you're using a skew, you want your tool rest above center. You don't want it on center. You want it above center so that your cutting is, if you had that tool rest on center, you'd be cutting like this on the skew. So you have to make sure that your eye, that the cutting point is between your eye and the wood there. So think about it that way. So when you're I could feel that going if I push too hard, by the way. You were talking about it pushing too hard, you could hear it. You could almost hear it as soon as you do that.
You can see it.
Yeah.
Vibrating.
So as soon as you take off, and the problem with ripples is once they've started, they're a real bitch to get rid of. So
Popcorn time.
popcorn time? Just in time. Is there any other questions or any other ways in which I can show you how not to do things?
What wood is that, Doug? It sounded and felt like you were a doll already. Or what is the wood?
This is a different maple. It's straight maple, and I'm using a different skew, Jim, to be honest.
Ah, okay. I was just going to say.
I wasn't using
it like it was sharp.
You're absolutely right.
Show us your favorite skew.
The one year I passed.
Oh, this one.
Yeah. I think it's because of low ankle.
Yeah, the one that little struck. Pardon?
It's because of the fact that there's a really sharp angle on that. If you get down, you can get to the, well, if you're using your skew properly, as far as and getting rid of the vibration, then this is one of the ones that when I first started wood turning, it really annoyed me when expert wood turners would say, well, I start my sanding at 320 grit or whatever, 220 grit. But in truth, on a skew, when you're using it properly on this thing, you really don't need. You start at 220 is, I can need 60 grit? No, not normally. I will say this though, that I have used 60 grit on these fine pieces because every once in a while there's a little bit of a shape issue that you can't quite get rid of, and if it's thin enough, 60 grit goes pretty good. Well, maybe 120 grit as opposed to 60. But if the shape isn't quite right, then when you're down there, sometimes going back with a piece of sandpaper as opposed to whatever. The other advantage for me of using sandpaper on these thin pieces is that you get a feel for it. One of the things, no matter what you do, is and you're finished it. Running your finger along it shows you any slight feature or anything at all. So wrapping a piece of fine sandpaper around just to smooth out that hump is as much a reason for using sandpaper as anything that the skew can do. I've never, yeah, Barry.
Whole different matter, but on the grind angle,
yeah,
I often hear the rule of thumb about how you should use like 1.5 times the thickness versus a known included angle.
Okay.
Like you hear like sometimes 25 degrees included, 30 degrees included. But then I often hear skew people say, well, 1.5 times the thickness.
Yeah.
But then there are some skews. Glenn Lucas' signature skew is more than 1/4 inch thick.
Yep.
And so if you use that rule, you have a very long grind.
Yep.
I'm wondering what the steepest grind is you've used satisfactorily.
Well, if you compare this angle to one of the ones I just showed you around, this is my big one that I use for roughing and stuff like that. And it
looks like about 40 degrees.
Yeah. It could be a little bit narrower, I guess, but I use that mostly for roughing as opposed to finishing, just because it's got. Can I have this one?
Take your pick. Either one.
You just throw a bunch of tools. Now you have space, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I got empty spots on my tool rack.
Yeah. But no, I like the reason I like that one is because it's got such a low angle on it for the other one for making a good clean cut.
I was taught that the angle between the long point and the short point is 70 degrees. The angle, the bevel angle, 30 degrees or 1.5 times the thickness.
Is there a particular reason why they came up with that solution, or is it mostly just in history?
I don't know the answer to that question. That's what they told me.
Well, the reason I ask you, Angelo, isn't because I'm trying to be smart. What I've often said for people is that, for me, is that it's really, really important to feel comfortable when you're standing here with any tool. If I pick up a skew, I'll take another one since I'm passing the other one around. Yeah, you can have that.
How many skews do you have? X plus one.
My first and foremost concern with the angle of any tool or any grind you're using is that when you're standing here at the lathe, you are relaxed in your shoulders, your body's in the right position, your hands are comfortable. And if it means 5 degrees, because 5 degrees can make a difference between doing this and doing that on any tool.
Of course.
So
the bevel places the handle.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So make sure, first of all, because I don't care what your bevel is, make sure you're in a comfortable position and then choose your bevel from that base.
Yeah. I can remember trying out those oval skews some years ago, and they had a real long bevel.
Yeah.
A real long cutting edge, and I found them very grabby.
Yeah.
Because it was like cutting with a steak knife, so to speak.
This is another thing you guys might, I've been watching some of the European wood turning on YouTube, and you see these guys running with, as you said, almost like a steak knife going around these corners and stuff like that. And it amazes me, but they seem to be able to do that. And but again, it's as if you were taking your skew and holding it like this.
They also those Russians especially are using the fishtail.
Yeah.
So it's a fishtail skew.
Yeah.
And it's also got a radius.
Yes.
So well, there are some flat ones, but yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing to watch those guys.
Yeah.
What they do.
If you're making 100 of those cuts a day, then sooner or later you're going to get good at it.
Well, the other
you're picking up the skew from time to time.
Yeah. Well, the other part that I think about, Angelo, guys, is when I'm doing this cut, obviously I can't do it with my handle this way. So if I want to do a cut like this, I have to have the blade change in direction. So they're really not changing the shape of the blade. They're changing the way that you're holding it and where it actually hits on your tool as opposed to anything else.
I agree.
So again,
Alan Lacer will teach you that there are 11 cuts you can make with the skew.
Is there?
I can make 2.
Yeah. Well, I can now make 1.
Does that include the grab stuff or not?
The what?
That's 12. The ram.
Oh, the grab. No, that's no.
Thank you guys for giving up for your coffee break. I really appreciate it. I have a 4.5 hour drive tomorrow morning, first thing to go up to Hubbard, Indiana, and so Hubbard, Ohio, and so
Thank you, Doug.
I want to do that, and I promise. And at John's request, I will be here Saturday. If somebody wants to come in, we'll do some more of this. If you want to come in and ask questions or work with it, okay?
Doug, one last question quickly.
Yeah, John.
The only way to make a thin finial like it is with a skew. There's no other way to cut it, right?
Oh, there's probably all sorts of other ways to do it, but this is the most successful way I've found.
Detail gouge. I agree with that. Detail gouge.
Yeah, detail gouge. There's all sorts of other ways.
Vortex tool.
Yeah. And to me, the one thing for me, Jim, is that the fact I'm riding this bevel helps me make it straight. All the other detail colors that people are talking about have a curved surface on the bottom, and that just means, for me, I find it a lot more difficult. Riding that bevel along the end of the tool like that just helps me make my spindle straight.
Doug, can you just address where on the blade, on the edge
Edge of the gouge you should be doing your cutting?
I tend to do my cutting between, say, about the middle point and the between. If I can sew this. I tend to be cutting between the midpoint and about that point. So it's like that bottom part of it as opposed to the top and the toe. If I'm going to do anything at all with the toe, as somebody else said, I can. If I'm going to do that, I'm going to be looking at the toe as far as doing upside down cutting. But I really try and stay away from the point if I can, which is that's a big catch. Thanks, Doug. Thank you very much,
Doug.
gentlemen.